It's not by chance that you're viewing this video. There's a reason you're here. Everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Trust the timing of your life and know that you're being led to where you're meant to be. As you stumble on this video, perhaps not by chance, it will serve to awaken your spirit. There is a stirring within your soul, a profound shift in your spiritual atmosphere, an undeniable movement taking place inside of you that can no longer be dismissed or ignored. You have endured the fire of trials, the silence of isolation, the pressure of expectation, and the pain of being misunderstood. And now, after generations marked by running, hiding, and succumbing to fear, you are the first in 1,000 years to stand your ground and rise instead of retreat. Understand this. What is unfolding in your life is not merely about personal growth or individual breakthrough. It is about legacy. It is about ancestral redemption. It is about divine disruption sent to break generational cycles and birth generational healing. You have shattered something open in the spiritual realm, and what emerges from you is more than mere success. It is the restoration of a lineage. We are about to walk through the deeper meaning of this moment in 7 prophetic and power-filled chapters. But before we proceed, I encourage you to like, share, and subscribe, not for vanity or numbers, but because this message is not ordinary content. It is divine revelation specifically designed for those who are spiritually attuned and chosen for this hour. To everyone who has faithfully supported this ministry through super thanks and offerings, know this. Your contributions are more than acts of generosity. They are prophetic seeds sown into sacred ground. May God return your faithfulness 1,000-fold. For you are not just supporting a message, you are partnering with a divine mandate. And now, if your spirit bears witness to this truth, if something inside you is leaping in recognition, type 77 in the comments below. That number is not random. It is a declaration in the spirit realm, a symbolic proclamation that you are not merely awake, you are rising. Not rising in fear, not fleeing in panic, but rising with holy fire, with divine authority, and with the courage to heal what others could only carry. Chosen one, understand this deeply. This message did not come to you by coincidence. You were divinely led to it. Why? Because you are the first in your bloodline to rise instead of run. You are the one called to confront it, conquer it, and redeem it. You are the one who held the line when it would have been easier to vanish into the shadows. Not everyone will have the spiritual endurance to reach the end of this word. Only those whose spirits are ready to awaken, to remember their divine identity, and to reclaim what was stolen across generations will remain. This is not entertainment. This is spiritual activation. This is a sacred mirror revealing the warrior you have become. And each time you return to this message, another layer of your divine assignment will be unveiled. Now prepare yourself. Let us go deeper. Chapter 1. The bloodline battle began before you were born. Chosen one. Understand this sacred truth. You were born into a battle that did not originate with you, but one that has always been destined to end through you. The war you are currently facing did not begin on the day you took your first breath. It began long before your birth, centuries ago, across the silent cries of ancestors, in generations whose stories were never fully told. From the moment your lineage was formed, it has been under spiritual siege. What you are experiencing in this present moment is not coincidental or random. It is inherited. It is the residue of unresolved warfare that has lingered through time, cloaked in silence and passed down through generations. For over 1,000 years, your family line has been entangled in repetitive cycles of fear, suppression, surrender, and retreat. Many great men and women have come before you, carrying brilliance within them, but they were spiritually muted, not due to a lack of gifting, but because they were bound by a lack of spiritual freedom. They bore extraordinary potential. They carried sacred dreams. They possessed divine callings, and yet they were taught, sometimes by culture, sometimes by trauma, and often by misguided religion, to hide what God had placed within them. They dreamed quietly, prayed silently, and lived carefully, never feeling truly safe to unleash what was burning inside their souls. In every generation, someone rose up and attempted to break the cycle. In every generation, someone dared to reach for freedom and every time, they almost made it. But just as breakthrough was within reach, resistance would strike. A crushing loss would descend. A devastating betrayal would break them. Fear would seep in like a slow poison. And religion, absent of true revelation, would choke the fire out of them. It wasn't that they were weak, no, they were powerful souls. But they were simply unprepared for the level of spiritual warfare that was attached to their divine assignments. You must understand this. The spiritual gifts running through your family line have always been strong, undeniably so, but the warfare opposing them has historically been stronger. That is, until now. Because when you entered the scene, something in the spirit realm shifted. You did not arrive as just another descendant. You arrived as a disruptor. You came not only bearing the traits of those before you, but also carrying the weight of their unfinished assignments. And yet, instead of collapsing beneath that weight, you began to confront it. Instead of bowing to the pressure, you began to build something new, something sacred, something eternal. You are not here by accident. You are the continuation of their prayers and the manifestation of promises they never lived to see fulfilled. You are the answer to what they hoped for but could not articulate. And in you, the battle that began generations ago is finally meeting its end. Not through fear, not through retreat, but through the courage of one who refused to fold. You never fully fit into your environment, not because something was wrong with you, but because something deeper was right within you. While others moved in complacent rhythm, accepting systems and structures without question, you found yourself inwardly wrestling, discerning, and questioning what they blindly followed. Even in your childhood, long before you had the language to articulate it, you experienced a spiritual resistance, a quiet yet persistent tension in your soul that signaled you were different. You saw beyond the surface of things. You recognized when people were pretending, wearing masks, or performing for acceptance. You intuitively picked up on atmospheres, on energies others failed to notice or understand. There were moments when tears welled up in your eyes without explanation, and times when laughter found its way into the darkest spaces, not because you were unaware of the pain, but because your spirit knew that something brighter, something divine, was drawing near. You were never rebellious by nature. What others labeled as rebellion was in fact revelation. You weren't rejecting authority, God was revealing identity. The stirring within you wasn't defiance, it was divine awakening. Heaven was speaking to your spirit early, because the battle you were born into required an early anointing, a heightened spiritual sensitivity, and a depth of awareness uncommon for your age. The pain you endured was not without purpose. It was a process of divine conditioning. The isolation you experienced was never a mark of rejection. It was a divine act of separation, a sacred setting apart for preparation that only silence could provide. You were being trained in obscurity for a victory that would one day unfold publicly, a victory that generations before you had longed to witness. The weight you've carried on your shoulders throughout your life has never been solely about your personal journey. You have been bearing the weight of ancestral prayers, the cries of those who came before you, prayers that were never answered in their lifetimes but are now coming into divine fulfillment through your obedience, your resilience, and your spiritual clarity. This is why you never managed to blend in, no matter how hard you tried. This is why more has always been required of you, why your trials were heavier, your tears deeper, and your healing process slower. Because you have not merely been healing yourself, you have been healing your bloodline. You are not just a person, you are a divine instrument, a spiritual reset button, the chosen course correction for a generational pattern that needed to be broken. You are the first in 1,000 years not to run, but to rise. And this rising is not rooted in pride or ego. It is anchored in divine order. It is about the restoration of what hell has tried, repeatedly, to destroy. The enemy has used every strategy imaginable to stop you. Confusion to cloud your vision, distraction to steal your focus, heartbreak to weaken your heart, betrayal to rupture your trust, and even moments of mental warfare to make you doubt your own mind. But none of it worked. Not one tactic prevailed, because despite it all, despite every blow in battle, you are still here. You are still standing. You are still chosen. The war began long before you arrived, but by divine design it is ending with you. Through your obedience, through your awakening, through your courageous refusal to remain silent, you have broken what others bowed to. You did not come into this world to continue the curse. You came to crush it. And your life, your very existence, is the irrefutable proof that the spiritual war is shifting. You are the one your bloodline has been waiting for. Chapter 2. The pattern was to run, but you chose to stand. Chosen one, throughout the history of your lineage, whenever spiritual warfare reared its head, whenever life became too heavy, too loud, or too painful, the instinct was almost always the same: to run. When the weight of reality became unbearable, they ran. When truth began to surface and demanded attention, they ran. When accountability knocked gently, or sometimes forcefully, on the doors of their hearts, they vanished into the shadows of distraction or despair. Some ran into silence, withdrawing into emotional isolation. Others ran into addiction, numbing the pain with temporary relief. Still others ran into religious structures devoid of authentic relationship with God, cloaking brokenness beneath rituals, yet never encountering true freedom. And some did not leave physically, but instead checked out spiritually and emotionally, present in body but absent in spirit. This act of running, of avoiding, suppressing, and evading truth, became a generational pattern, a form of survival passed down like an unspoken inheritance. The family code became, don't confront it, just endure it. Don't talk about it, just bury it. Don't heal it, just hide it. But then you came, and you, chosen one, did the opposite. You felt the same fire that scorched those who came before you, but you did not flinch. You heard the same whispers of doubt that silenced generations, but you did not retreat. You were tempted to run. Of course you were. At times it would have been easier to numb the pain, to disconnect from reality, to pretend that none of it ever happened. But something deep within you refused to surrender. Something sacred inside you could not look away from the calling. You were not wired like the rest. You were not created for escape. You were fashioned for confrontation, not with bitterness, but with bravery. In the very moments when your ancestors would have disappeared into emotional darkness, you chose to stand in the light. You stood when grief wrapped itself around your chest and threatened to suffocate your hope. You stood when no one came to support you, when it felt like you were holding the weight of healing alone. You stood when every voice around you screamed, "Give up," and even when your own thoughts turned against you. You stood not because it was easy, but because the cost of running had become too high. Understand this: you didn't merely break a habit, you broke a spiritual expectation. Your decision to remain grounded, present, and faithful in the face of inherited pain became a divine disruption to a cycle that had reigned uncontested for centuries. With sacred defiance, you declared, "No more running, not in my bloodline, and not under my watch." And heaven heard you. Heaven witnessed your stand. But your strength was not only for your sake. You stood on behalf of others. You stood for the child locked inside your great-grandmother, the girl who never had the chance to dream freely. You stood for the brother who chose silence over expression because he was never taught how to speak his truth. You stood for those who wept behind closed doors, fearing judgment more than emotional death. You stood for the women who remained in loveless cycles, and for the men who were taught that emotion was weakness, that tears were shameful, and that vulnerability was dangerous. You were not sent to simply witness their pain. You were sent to redeem it, to become what they could never fully be: the healed one, the whole one, the standing one. And through your stand, the spiritual landscape has shifted. You are not just surviving the story, you are rewriting it. You are the one your lineage has been waiting for. There is immeasurable power in the act of standing still when everything within and around you is screaming for you to run. This is not mere passivity, it is a spiritual posture, a deliberate stance of faith and defiance against fear. It is a visible sign to the enemy that you are no longer governed by panic, no longer paralyzed by the echoes of trauma, and no longer intimidated by shadows, because you have become light in the very places that once overwhelmed you with darkness. And in the sacred moment when you chose to stand, when you planted your feet firmly in truth, in obedience, and in quiet resilience, something in the spirit realm shifted profoundly. Though you may not have heard it audibly, heaven responded with a roar. Angels applauded. Ancestral prayers, long buried under the weight of time, were suddenly activated. The heavens declared in unison, now the bloodline can breathe. Now the curse is breaking. Now the healing begins. You stood, and in doing so, a divine ripple effect was released. A spiritual chain reaction began that will echo through time. Future generations will find the strength to stand because you stood first. Your children and your children's children will no longer inherit the fear that once gripped your lineage. They will inherit your faith. Your household will no longer be built on the shaky foundation of survival, but on the enduring rock of spiritual strength and unwavering presence. All of this legacy of healing and hope, is unfolding because you made a different choice. You chose not to mimic what was modeled before you. You chose not to repeat the inherited patterns of escape, suppression, and silence. Instead, you chose to become the interruption, the holy disruption, the first in 1,000 years not to run, but to rise through the sacred act of standing still. This is what sets you apart. Not perfection, but presence. Not a path of ease, but the endurance to remain. You chose to show up for the healing, not just your own, but that of your bloodline. You didn't retreat from the assignment placed upon your life. You didn't run when the warfare came. Instead, you welcomed the refining fire. You allowed God to mold you, break you, rebuild you, and fortify you. And now you are no longer merely surviving the storms. You are standing, and more than that, you are becoming unshakable. Chapter 3. Your rise isn't loud, but it's legendary. Chosen one. Understand this profound truth. Your rise is not the kind that the world immediately notices or celebrates, but in the spirit realm, your name is already known and your authority already established. This rise is not marked by lights, stages, applause, or viral recognition. It is not driven by public validation, by followers, or by earthly accolades. No, this rise is rooted in divine assignment. Heaven did not raise you to be famous. Heaven raised you to be faithful. Your elevation is unfolding quietly, in secret places, in silent moments, and within the sacred process of sanctification. While others are pursuing platforms and chasing after the fleeting approval of men, you are being forged in private, in obscurity, in consecration. While many seek to be seen, you are seeking vision. While others clamor for validation, you are cultivating obedience. You are rising in the early morning hours when no one sees your tears but God. You are rising in your stillness, in your whispered yes to God when it would be far easier to say no. You are rising with each act of radical obedience. Obedience that makes little sense in the natural, but is shaping a supernatural trajectory that only heaven could design. You are not rising because you are striving or struggling to be seen. You are rising because you are trusting the one who called you, appointed you, and is now raising you in due season. This rise is legendary not because of its volume or visibility, but because of its depth, its authenticity, and, most of all, its permanence. You are rising after heartbreak that could have broken your spirit beyond repair. You are rising after being misunderstood, overlooked, and spoken against, even by those for whom you once interceded in love and faith. You are rising after seasons of stripping, times when everything you leaned on was taken away, and yet you still chose grace over bitterness, surrender over resistance, and healing over hardness. You did not rush the process, nor did you demand immediate results. Instead, you allowed God to break what needed to be broken, to heal what was wounded, and to strip away everything that could not go with you into your next season. And now you are rising, not from hype, not from ambition, not from applause, but from a place of deep healing. You are rising with revelation that cannot be taught in classrooms, with discernment that was not gleaned from textbooks, but from warfare. You carry a wisdom that was forged in the fire of trial and testing, and you now walk with a quiet authority that cannot be imitated, replicated, or faked. You have no need to boast, because your fruit speaks louder than words. You feel no urge to compete, because your very presence shifts the atmosphere. You do not even need to announce your comeback, because your character, refined, tested, and proven, has already confirmed it. This is the rise the world may overlook, but heaven is watching, and it is legendary. Your rise is wrapped in scars, yet not one of them brings you shame. Instead, they serve as sacred emblems, your spiritual credentials, proving that the pit could not stop you and the pain could not paralyze you. You wear these scars not as symbols of defeat, but as living testimonies of divine survival, each one a reminder of how God sustained you, protected you, and called you, especially in the very moments when others misunderstood you, misjudged you, or cast you aside. You are not rising out of ego, ambition, or a need to be seen. You are rising out of essence, out of the unshakable truth of who God created you to be, and your elevation is not accidental or self-made, but prophetic. It was written into your story before your first breath, decreed in the heavens long before you were dismissed on earth. Your rising was confirmed by God before it was ever questioned by people, and the beauty of it all is this: you do not owe anyone an explanation. Let them wonder how you got here. Let them whisper in confusion. Let them speculate about what they cannot spiritually discern. You were never sent to defend your destiny. You were sent to live it. You were never meant to rise with the crowd, because you were never called to be common. You were chosen, set apart, and consecrated for a purpose far greater than visibility or validation. And that is precisely why your rise looks different. It is slower, yes, but it is also steadier. It is quieter, but it is far deeper. It is unseen by many, but it is undeniably sacred. What God is building within you cannot be shaken by opinion, undermined by circumstance, or taken by any hand but His. This is not a moment of microwave miracles or fleeting applause. This is an eternal move of God, a foundational rise, a legacy-level shift that is establishing something holy, generational, and lasting. And when God completes what He has begun in you, they will not merely say that you rose, they will say that you rewrote the script, that you redefined what resilience and redemption look like. So stay the course, chosen one. Maintain your posture of humility and power. Guard your oil, your anointing, with reverence, and keep your eyes fixed firmly on the author and finisher of your faith. For He who began this work in you is faithful to complete it, and the rise He has ordained cannot be denied. Chapter 4. The enemy fears your stand more than your success. Chosen one, you must grasp this truth with unwavering clarity. The enemy is not threatened by your worldly accomplishments. He does not tremble at the sight of your car, your career title, your social status, or even the numbers in your bank account. What truly shakes the very foundations of darkness is not what you hold in your hand, but what you carry in your spirit. It is not your external success that disrupts hell's agenda. It is the moment you rise internally, spiritually, and unshakably. That is why, for so long, your warfare has seemed disproportionate to your visible lifestyle. The battles came long before the blessings. The attacks preceded the achievements. The resistance arrived before the reward ever manifested, because the enemy discerned something powerful within you long before you even recognized it yourself. And what he feared most was not your elevation, but your awakening. The moment you would stop running and start rising. The moment you would no longer just exist, but take your rightful stand. Hell is not intimidated by a talented person who lacks spiritual depth. It trembles at the presence of a grounded warrior who knows their identity in Christ and walks in that truth with conviction. Because when you stand, not merely in your body, but in your spirit, in your purpose, and in your unwavering posture of faith, you become immovable, untouchable, and unstoppable. You become a generational threat, not only to your immediate circumstances, but to every stronghold that has been assigned to your bloodline for generations. Understand this: the battle has never truly been about material wealth or career advancement. It has always been about the mantle on your life. The enemy didn't want your job, he wanted your joy. He wasn't targeting your platform, he was after your posture, your spiritual alignment and authority. He attempted to derail you through delays, distract you with discouragement, and deceive you with false comforts and temporary fixes. He tried to wear you down with betrayal, to wound you with disappointment, and to tempt you into giving up your ground. But you didn't fold. You didn't flee. You stood firm, anchored in truth, clothed in righteousness, and rooted in grace. And that act alone sent shockwaves through the kingdom of darkness. Because your stand was not just a personal victory, it was a prophetic declaration. It declared that you are no longer a passive target, but an active threat, a warrior awakened, a mantle carrier, and a chosen one who will not be moved. When you make the decision to stand, truly stand, in faith, in purpose, and in spiritual authority, unseen realms begin to respond. Portals open, generational blessings are unlocked, prophetic timelines that have been dormant for centuries suddenly activate, and movements that were held back by fear, bondage, and silence begin to flow with divine momentum. All because one individual within a bloodline refused to bow to what broke those before them. And chosen one, that person is you. You are not standing merely for yourself. You are standing on behalf of the unborn child in your family who will one day inherit a new reality of freedom. You are standing for the ancestors who long for liberation but were never able to taste it. You are standing to secure a righteous foundation for a future that is depending on your courage. You are standing in alignment with every whispered prayer your grandmother ever released in secret, every buried dream your grandfather carried but could not pursue, and every opportunity that was denied to your lineage because of oppression, limitation, or injustice. And the enemy is acutely aware of the weight of your stand. That is why the attacks intensified the moment you chose to get serious about your faith. That is why your clarity was assaulted the instant you began to walk with intentionality in your divine purpose. Because when you take your rightful position, not only as a believer, but as a builder, the spiritual landscape begins to shift. You are no longer simply a survivor. You have become a system breaker, a spiritual architect, a divine disruption in motion. You carry blueprints in your spirit, sacred designs etched into your being by heaven itself. And with every act of obedience, every choice to resist regression, every surrender to God when quitting would be easier, you are unlocking something ancient, something holy, something heaven has been eagerly waiting to release into the earth through you. You did not merely survive the pit, you planted something sacred in its soil. You did not simply endure the wilderness, you mapped its terrain so the next generation could navigate it with greater ease and clarity. And now the enemy can no longer halt your movement because your posture has shifted. You are no longer operating in hesitation or fear. You are no longer asking for permission to exist or to lead. You are walking fully in authority. And here is the part that the enemy despises most. Your authority is not man-made, not contingent upon titles, resumes, credentials, or worldly accomplishments. Your authority flows directly from the throne of God. It is not rooted in your past experience, but in your eternal identity. You have been chosen not by merit, but by divine decree. You were marked before you were born, appointed before you were aware, and covered by heaven even before you became conscious of the call on your life. Chapter 5. Your rise is resurrecting ancient promises. Chosen one, though it may appear to you that you are simply stepping into your personal destiny, what is truly unfolding is far more profound. You are entering into a divine continuation, a sacred unfolding of a story that began long before your arrival. This is not merely your moment, it is the fulfillment of something far older than your lifetime, something ancient, holy, and deeply spiritual. The mantle you now carry did not originate with you. It was forged through generations of faith, protected through seasons of suffering, preserved through years of silence, and now at last it has found a vessel, you, who is willing and worthy to carry it into manifestation. The promises tied to your bloodline were not casual hopes or fleeting wishes. They were sacred covenants, divinely established agreements sealed in suffering and bathed in intercession. Promises that could not be voided, only delayed until a worthy one emerged. For generations, those promises remained dormant, not because God had forgotten them, but because the lineage lacked one with the purity, the obedience, and the spiritual fortitude to carry their full weight. And yet, in His mercy and perfect timing, God saw you, not because you were perfect, but because your posture before Him was one of surrender, reverence, and willingness. He saw your heart, your readiness to say yes even when the cost was high, your willingness to endure seasons of silence without relinquishing the vision, your capacity to walk into rooms your ancestors only dreamed of, not out of pride, but with holy purpose. You are the divine answer to generational prayers, fulfilling words that were once whispered in huts, in fields, in back rooms behind locked doors, uttered through trembling voices and lifted from calloused hands folded in faith. There were great-grandmothers who cried out to God for someone who would arise and break the cycles of bondage and lack. There were grandfathers who labored under oppressive systems that told them to give up, and yet they held on, whispering promises of hope to the wind, believing that one day someone would rise to receive them. You are that someone. The same wind that carried their whispered prayers through the generations has now delivered them into the womb of your destiny. And now those ancient promises, long buried beneath delay, are rising again through your obedience, your endurance, and your unwavering yes. You are not merely stepping into a promise, you are resurrecting a legacy, reactivating timelines that had long been suspended in the spiritual realm. You are taking ancient blueprints, etched in intercession, drawn through travail, and soaked in generations of tears, and transforming them into visible, tangible, undeniable reality. Heaven has kept a meticulous record of these covenants, and now, as your life proves worthy of the sacred assignment, those heavenly archives are being opened. Your obedience is causing angelic movement. Your unwavering discipline is stirring ancestral pride within the great cloud of witnesses. You are not a random successor. You are heaven's divine continuation, the bridge between what was once spoken in faith and what must now be seen in fulfillment. You are carrying spiritual mantles that were once too heavy for previous generations, but are made light through your surrender. You now walk paths that were once inaccessible to your ancestors, but have been divinely opened through your reverence and righteousness. You are accessing blessings that were not denied but simply delayed, held in trust until someone like you would rise, someone who would carry them rightly, with purity and purpose, with holiness and humility. Your rise is not merely historical, it is prophetic. It is awakening ancient altars and stirring the depths of heavenly archives. With every step you take forward in obedience and authority, something backward is being released and restored. Bloodline wounds are being healed retroactively, and peace is being granted to the souls of those who once fought valiantly but never witnessed the fruit of their faith. And now, because you chose to stand, they can finally rest. Because you dared to say yes, they now have divine closure. Chapter 6. A rise forged in fire, not crowned by fame. Chosen one, let's tell the truth. This rise did not come easily, nor did it arrive adorned in applause, surrounded by spotlights, or along smooth and celebrated paths. It was not birthed on stages or crowned with fame, but rather forged in the fire of survival, in the furnace of affliction, and it is evident in the quiet authority with which you move, in the way you pray with weight, discern with depth, and walk into rooms needing no announcement, yet still causing atmospheres to shift under the weight of the mantle you now carry. For God did not shape you through public platforms, but in the hidden places of private pain, where others were being celebrated while you were being sanctified, where some collected accolades while you collected scars that heaven has since turned into strategies and testimonies. As you rose not through shortcuts or applause, but through seasons of shutdowns, isolation, unseen warfare, betrayal in familiar circles, fear that clawed at your mind, and spiritual battles that raged while you slept, all while continuing to show up, often without confirmation, without clarity, without congratulations, fueled only by raw obedience and relentless faith, because God allowed the fire not to destroy you, but to refine you, to burn away what was not essential, to purify your motives, and to reveal the core of who He created you to be. And now the unshakable presence you carry, the authority that goes before you, is not the product of ease, but of endurance. Your shine is not glitter, it is glory, not polished by performance, but proven in process. Not the result of striving, but the unmistakable evidence of God's presence. People see your glow, but they don't realize it came from glowing embers, not golden stages. You were shaped in suffering, not in the spotlight. That's why your anointing feels different. You don't speak from theory, you speak from experience. You've lived it. You've bled for it. Now you carry it. The fire you walked through burned away your pride. It stripped you of self-reliance. It destroyed the version of you that craved validation. What remains is holy. What remains is useful to God, pure and untainted. When you walk into rooms, the atmosphere shifts. When you speak, demons get nervous. When you worship, chains break off others. Why? Because your oil came at a cost. Your authority was forged in spiritual battles. Now you don't act out of emotion, you move with prophetic purpose. That's why even your silence carries power. People wonder why you don't explain yourself, why you're not quick to prove your growth. It's because your rise isn't about pride. It's about the process. You've been misunderstood, overlooked, and mishandled. But now you see clearly. You no longer need attention, you need alignment. The same fire that almost destroyed you now lights your path. You walk with humility. You pray with boldness. You see things more clearly. You expect nothing, but you're ready for anything. Because you know what it's like to have nothing and still be held by God. Chapter 7. Your rise was never just for you. It was for a generation. Chosen one. Let this truth settle deeply within your spirit. Your rise was never solely about you. It was never meant to be a private victory. It was a prophetic shift, a signal released into the spiritual realm, a divine announcement echoing across generations and timelines. When you chose to rise, you didn't just elevate yourself. You opened spiritual portals, shattered generational curses, and broke chains that had entangled your bloodline for centuries. The atmosphere over your lineage changed because one person, you, finally said, "I'm not running, I'm rising." Heaven rejoiced, hell panicked, and history was rewritten in that moment. This journey is far greater than your bank account, your brand, or even your personal breakthrough. You were chosen to complete what others only dreamed of beginning, to finish building what your ancestors envisioned in hope, but never lived to see. You are the echo of long-forgotten prayers, the manifestation of silent hopes, the living answer to cries that once went unheard until now. Your story is not merely a testimony, it is a blueprint. Your scars are not signs of defeat, they are sacred evidence that healing is possible. Your decision to stand gave others permission to stop shrinking and start shining. Though you may have felt alone, your obedience became a light that now illuminates the path for many. People you will never meet will be touched, inspired, and strengthened by the fire you endured and the unwavering faith you refused to let go of. Because you didn't quit, others are now empowered to begin. Because you didn't bend, others have found the courage to stand. Because you didn't break, healing is now reaching those who thought restoration was impossible. Chosen one, you are no longer merely walking in freedom. You are walking in fulfillment. You have become the living bridge between what was and what can never remain the same. Your courage reversed generational patterns, and your worship rewrote the script. You are the first in 1,000 years to boldly declare, "It stops with me." The trauma ends here. The destructive cycles end here. The silence ends here. And in its place, a new legacy begins, one built on healing, holiness, and wholeness. You did not rise because you were perfect. You rose because you were willing. You chose the path of crushing over comfort, the weight of the cross over the lure of the crown. That is why God elevated you, not because you were loud, but because you remained loyal when no one was watching. While others turned away, heaven watched you stay faithful, steadfast, and surrendered. And now heaven is responding. What is coming to you is not merely a reward, it is a responsibility. Your voice has become a trumpet in the spirit. Your presence is now prophetic. When you enter rooms, you do not merely bring experience, you bring evidence. Proof that God still raises up remnant leaders. and confirmation that bloodlines can indeed be redeemed. The glory that is about to rest upon your life is not for clout or personal gain, it is for divine calling. God is increasing your visibility, not for applause, but so that others may see what true redemption looks like. He is releasing resources, not to elevate your status, but so that you may rebuild what was once torn down and restore what seemed forever lost. And if you're still hungry for more chapters to this journey, or a visual concept for a video or thumbnail, just say the word. I'm here and ready to help bring it all to life. Thanks for watching. Here ends this video. Take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. If you find this video interesting,